The fastest way to lose everything is to threaten someone whose job is already uncovering the truth. The underground parking garage beneath the Bellwood Police Department echoed with the steady hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of elevators carrying employees toward another ordinary workday. Concrete pillars stretched into long shadows, security cameras blinked quietly from every corner, and the smell of motor oil mixed with cool morning air drifting through the entrance ramp. Alicia Monroe stepped out of a silver sedan carrying a slim leather portfolio and a simple black briefcase. Her charcoal business suit blended effortlessly into the crowd of attorneys, city officials, and courthouse employees crossing the garage. Nothing about her appearance demanded attention. She walked with measured confidence, never rushing, never hesitating, as though she had entered buildings like this thousands of times before. Just as she reached the elevator lobby, Sergeant Blake Turner stepped directly into her path. His polished badge reflected the overhead lights, while his folded arms made it clear the conversation would happen on his terms. "You are asking too many questions around my department," he said with a cold smile. "Take some professional advice. Walk away before your career walks away from you." Several officers passing nearby slowed their pace but kept moving, pretending not to notice. Alicia met his eyes without raising her voice. "Is that an official statement, Sergeant?" she asked calmly. Turner let out a quiet laugh. "It is friendly advice." Alicia glanced briefly toward a security camera mounted above the elevator doors before looking back at him. "Then I hope you are comfortable standing behind it." Her answer caught him off guard for only a fraction of a second before confidence returned to his expression. He had dealt with attorneys before. Most pushed hard during meetings and backed away when confronted outside conference rooms. He assumed Alicia would be no different. What he did not know was that she had already spent months studying reports connected to his patrol unit. She recognized his name long before he recognized hers. Turner took another step closer, lowering his voice. "This city has enough problems without outside lawyers trying to create new ones. Whatever complaint brought you here, leave it alone." Alicia adjusted the strap of her briefcase without breaking eye contact. "I came here to understand the facts." "Sometimes facts depend on who is writing the report," Turner replied. "You should remember that." The elevator doors opened behind them, and a group of city employees quietly stepped inside before deciding to wait for the next car instead. Even they could feel the tension hanging in the air. Alicia remained completely composed. There was no anger in her face, no fear in her posture, only the quiet patience of someone listening far more carefully than she appeared. She noticed the unit number on Turner's patrol vehicle parked nearby. She noticed the digital clock above the elevator. She noticed Officer Jason Reed standing across the garage pretending to review paperwork while watching every word unfold. Every detail settled into her memory with effortless precision. Turner believed he was ending an uncomfortable conversation before it could become a problem. In reality, every sentence he spoke added another piece to a puzzle that had already begun taking shape long before either of them entered that parking garage. Alicia finally pressed the elevator button once more and waited without another word. The silence unsettled Turner far more than any argument could have. As the doors slowly closed between them, he watched her disappear toward the upper floors, believing he had successfully intimidated another persistent attorney. He never realized that the investigation he wanted to stop had just captured its most valuable evidence, and the woman he believed had no authority was already leading every step of it. A little more than 24 hours earlier, the atmosphere inside the Federal Justice Center could not have been more different from the tense silence waiting beneath the Bellwood Police Department. Morning sunlight spilled through tall windows overlooking the city skyline, while rows of neatly organized case files rested on a polished oak conference table. Alicia Monroe stood alone beside the table with a mug of black coffee that had already grown cold. Spread before her were dozens of reports collected over the past several months. Citizen complaints, patrol logs, internal memorandums, traffic stop records, public surveillance requests. Individually, each document appeared ordinary. Together, they revealed patterns that were impossible to ignore. The same names surfaced repeatedly. The same neighborhoods appeared in report after report. The same explanations were copied with remarkable consistency. Alicia slowly turned another page before making a brief handwritten note in the margin. She never circled conclusions before verifying every available fact. That discipline had earned the respect of judges, investigators, and federal attorneys throughout her career. Her phone vibrated softly across the table. Maya Collins had sent a secure message confirming that another batch of digital records had arrived overnight from the city archives. Alicia thanked her with a short reply before locking the phone again. There was still one missing piece she needed before the investigation could move forward. Special Agent Marcus Hale entered the conference room carrying a sealed evidence envelope. He placed it carefully beside Alicia without saying a word. After years of working together, neither of them wasted time with unnecessary conversation. Marcus finally broke the silence. Bellwood still believes they are responding to a routine civil complaint. Alicia nodded. That assumption gives us room to observe without changing anyone's behavior. Marcus looked toward the collection of reports covering the table. You are certain you want to go in without identifying yourself? Alicia closed one of the folders and secured it inside her briefcase. The moment people know who I am, they stop showing me who they really are. Marcus understood exactly what she meant. Investigations built on public appearances often revealed very little. Real character appeared during ordinary moments when no one believed their decisions would be examined. That was why Alicia insisted on visiting departments quietly, introducing herself simply as an attorney reviewing complaints instead of revealing the leadership role she actually held. Before leaving the conference room, she removed her official Department of Justice credential from around her neck and slipped it into a side compartment inside her briefcase. From that moment forward, she looked exactly like any experienced civil rights attorney arriving to review public records. There were no federal agents surrounding her. No government vehicle waiting outside. No announcement. Only patience and careful observation. Later that afternoon, she drove nearly 40 miles to Bellwood in an unmarked sedan rented through a federal administrative contract. During the drive, she replayed interviews she had conducted with local families, who described encounters that felt remarkably similar despite occurring months apart. Every witness had remembered different details, yet one thing never changed. They all believed their concerns had disappeared into paperwork that no one intended to read. Alicia intended to prove them wrong. As the city skyline gave way to municipal buildings and narrow downtown streets, she parked several blocks away from the police department and walked the remaining distance. She wanted to see the neighborhood without anyone expecting her arrival. People greeted one another outside small businesses. Parents walked children toward school. Delivery trucks unloaded supplies. Everything appeared perfectly ordinary, yet investigations were rarely about what happened in plain sight. They were about the quiet decisions hidden behind office doors. Alicia paused briefly across the street from the police headquarters and studied the building without emotion. Somewhere inside were the answers she had spent months pursuing, and before the next sunrise someone would unknowingly reveal far more than any official report ever could. Sergeant Blake Turner had built a reputation that reached far beyond the walls of the Bellwood Police Department, and nearly everyone inside the building reacted to his presence before he ever spoke a single word. The front desk officer straightened a stack of paperwork the moment Turner walked through the lobby. Two younger patrol officers immediately lowered their voices while discussing the previous night's shift. Even civilian employees seemed careful not to remain in his path for very long. Respect and caution often looked similar from a distance, but Alicia Munro had spent enough years studying organizations to recognize the difference. Genuine respect created confidence. Fear created silence. As she entered the records division carrying nothing more than her briefcase and a legal notepad, she quietly observed how conversations changed whenever Turner appeared. Laughter stopped. Doors closed more quickly. Simple questions became short answers. No one openly challenged him, yet no one looked completely comfortable around him either. Captain Laura Bennett emerged from her office carrying several folders and greeted Turner with the relaxed familiarity of someone accustomed to relying on his experience. "Everything running smoothly this morning?" she asked. Turner nodded confidently. "Nothing we cannot handle." Bennett smiled, accepted the answer without another question, and continued toward a staff meeting. Alicia noticed the exchange carefully. Leadership often revealed itself not only through decisions but through assumptions. If everyone believed Turner always had the situation under control, fewer people would feel motivated to verify the details behind his reports. Across the room, Officer Jason Reed quietly reviewed paperwork at his desk. Unlike the others, he avoided looking toward Turner unless absolutely necessary. His desk was unusually organized, with reports arranged in perfectly aligned stacks and handwritten notes clipped neatly beside each file. Alicia watched him hesitate for a brief moment before placing one folder inside a locked drawer instead of the outgoing records basket. The movement lasted only seconds, but experienced investigators learned to pay attention to moments most people ignored. Turner walked through the office greeting employees with practiced confidence, exchanging brief comments that reinforced his position without sounding openly demanding. Every conversation ended the same way. Someone nodded. Someone agreed. Someone stepped aside. It was the rhythm of an environment where authority had become routine rather than questioned. Alicia requested access to several public incident reports available under state disclosure laws. The records clerk politely accepted her written request, but before retrieving the file she glanced toward Turner almost instinctively. It was only a quick look, lasting less than a heartbeat, yet it spoke volumes. Turner gave the slightest nod before the clerk disappeared into the archive room. Alicia pretended not to notice, writing another observation inside her notebook instead. A few minutes later Jason crossed the hallway carrying a sealed evidence envelope intended for another office. As he passed Alicia, their eyes met briefly. There was no conversation, no introduction, only a silent recognition that each understood far more than either could safely discuss in a crowded police station. Turner interrupted the moment almost immediately. "Reed, those reports are due upstairs." Jason answered without hesitation. "Yes, Sergeant." His tone remained professional, but Alicia noticed the subtle tension in his expression before he continued down the hallway. Every organization had people who protected the system and people who quietly carried the weight of what they had seen. Jason appeared to belong to the second group. Alicia closed her notebook and thanked the records clerk as the requested documents arrived. On the surface, the morning looked completely ordinary. Reports were filed. Phones rang. Officers prepared for patrol. Yet beneath the routine, invisible pressure shaped every conversation and every decision. Turner believed years of unquestioned authority had made him untouchable. He never realized that the quiet officer who avoided his eyes still possessed one original report that had never been altered, and that single document would soon become far more valuable than anyone inside the department could imagine. The records room remained unusually quiet after the morning rush, and the steady rhythm of printers, telephones, and distant conversations blended into the background as Alicia Munro carefully reviewed another stack of public documents. Every page appeared complete at first glance, yet small inconsistencies slowly emerged the longer she studied them. Timestamps varied by only a few minutes. Witness descriptions seem strangely similar despite involving different people. Entire paragraphs matched word for word across reports filed weeks apart. Alicia had seen enough investigations to know that patterns often mattered more than isolated mistakes. She requested one additional incident file from the records clerk, who politely excused herself before disappearing into the archive room. While Alicia waited, Sergeant Blake Turner approached with the same confident stride that had already become familiar throughout the building. He stopped beside her desk without asking permission. "You are spending a lot of time reading paperwork that is not going to tell you anything useful," he said with a controlled smile. Alicia closed the folder she had been reviewing and looked up calmly. "Sometimes paperwork answers questions that conversations cannot." Turner folded his arms. "Or sometimes people read too much into routine reports because they are looking for problems that do not exist." Alicia nodded slightly. "That is why facts are important." Turner glanced toward the clerk returning with another file and reached for it before she could hand it across the counter. He briefly examined the report, then placed it back on the desk in front of Alicia. "Everything you need is already there," he said. "You will not find any surprises." Alicia accepted the folder without reacting to his interruption. "I appreciate your confidence." Turner leaned slightly closer, lowering his voice enough that nearby employees could not easily hear the conversation. "Let me save you some time. Bellwood officers do real police work every day. Outside attorneys often arrive with assumptions before they arrive with evidence. You should be careful not to confuse the two." Alicia rested one hand lightly on her notebook. "That is exactly why I prefer asking questions before reaching conclusions." Turner smiled again, although the expression no longer appeared entirely relaxed. "Questions can become expensive if they start affecting honest officers." Alicia answered without hesitation. Truth has never been afraid of questions. For the first time that morning, Turner remained silent for several seconds. He seemed uncertain whether she was simply confident or whether she knew something he did not. Before he could continue, Officer Jason Reed entered the records room carrying another sealed folder intended for administrative review. He slowed almost imperceptibly when he noticed Alicia and Turner standing together. Turner immediately redirected his attention. "Reed, deliver those upstairs. We do not need delays today." "Yes, Sergeant," Jason replied before continuing toward the administrative offices. Alicia noticed that Jason tightened his grip on the folder as he walked away, almost as though he feared someone might ask for it before it reached its destination. The moment lasted only an instant, but it reinforced everything Alicia had been quietly observing since entering the department. Turner turned back toward her. "I hope you understand something. Bellwood supports transparency, but we also protect our officers from unnecessary distractions. If your clients expect dramatic discoveries, they are probably going to be disappointed." Alicia offered a polite smile that revealed nothing. "I never ask evidence to become dramatic. I only ask it to remain accurate." Turner gave a brief laugh before walking away, apparently satisfied that he had regained control of the exchange. Several employees resumed their work the moment he disappeared around the corner, and ordinary conversation slowly returned to the office. Alicia reopened the report in front of her, but instead of reading immediately, she quietly wrote down the exact time of the conversation, the location, the names of every employee who had been nearby, and the specific wording Turner had chosen. None of those details seemed extraordinary by themselves. Together they painted a picture that grew clearer with every passing hour. Turner believed he had successfully discouraged another attorney from digging any deeper, but he never realized that every attempt to steer her away from the facts only convinced her she was getting closer to the truth. By early afternoon, the Bellwood Police Department had settled into a quieter rhythm, but beneath the appearance of routine business, Alicia Monroe could feel subtle currents of hesitation flowing through nearly every hallway. Officers moved between offices carrying reports, dispatch radios crackled with ordinary calls, and administrative staff answered telephones with practiced professionalism. Yet every time Alicia approached a new department or requested another public record, conversations briefly paused before continuing again. She never interpreted silence as proof of wrongdoing, but she understood that silence often revealed uncertainty. After organizing copies of the report she had already reviewed, Alicia walked toward the archive hallway where older case files were temporarily stored before digital indexing. The narrow corridor was empty except for Officer Jason Reed, who stood beside a rolling cart stacked with sealed folders waiting to be transferred upstairs. When he noticed Alicia approaching, he hesitated for only a moment before speaking quietly. "You have been asking about reports from last fall." Alicia nodded without surprise. "I am trying to understand the timeline." Jason looked toward both ends of the hallway before lowering his voice. "Sometimes the first report is not always the final report." His words were carefully chosen, as though every sentence had already been rehearsed in his mind. Alicia did not rush to ask another question. Instead, she allowed the silence to give him room to decide how much he wanted to say. After several seconds, Jason slowly removed one folder from the cart, holding it against his side rather than handing it over. "There are things I have wanted to ask about," he admitted. "But around here people learn to stop asking." Alicia studied his expression. She saw neither anger nor resentment, only the exhaustion of someone carrying uncertainty for far too long. "Questions become easier when people know the truth will be treated fairly," she said. Jason looked down at the folder before meeting her eyes again. "Fair is not a word people use very often in this building." Alicia reached into her briefcase and removed a simple business card containing only her name, office telephone number, and professional email address. There was no federal title beneath her name, no government seal, and nothing suggesting the authority she actually carried. She offered the card without another explanation. "If you ever decide that facts deserve a place where they will be reviewed carefully, you know how to reach me." Jason accepted the card but kept the folder firmly in his hands. "I cannot do this today," he said quietly. "You do not have to," Alicia replied. "The decision has to be yours." Before either of them could continue, footsteps echoed from the opposite end of the hallway. Sergeant Blake Turner rounded the corner with the confident pace Alicia had already come to expect. His eyes immediately moved from Jason to the folder and then to Alicia. "Reed," Turner said evenly, "those administrative files are expected upstairs 5 minutes ago." Jason straightened immediately. "Yes, Sergeant." Turner shifted his attention toward Alicia. "Finding everything you need?" His smile appeared polite, but the question carried an unmistakable edge. Alicia answered with the same calm professionalism she had maintained throughout the day. "I am finding exactly what public records allow me to review." Turner gave a short nod before glancing once more at the folder Jason carried. "Good. I would hate to see anyone waste valuable time chasing stories that never happened." Jason quietly continued down the hallway without looking back, clutching the folder just tightly enough for Alicia to notice. Turner watched him disappear before returning his attention to her. "Some people around here are still learning how this department works," he said. "Experience teaches them what deserves attention and what does not." Alicia slipped the business card holder back into her briefcase. "Experience should never replace accuracy." Turner offered another practiced smile before walking away, convinced he had interrupted nothing of importance. Alicia remained in the hallway for another moment, listening to the fading footsteps and replaying every word Jason had chosen not to say. She had not received the original report she suspected still existed, but she had gained something equally valuable. Someone inside the department was struggling between loyalty and conscience, and when that balance finally shifted, the truth would have a voice that no rewritten document could silence. Late that afternoon, Alicia Monroe left the Bellwood Police Department carrying nothing more than copies of public records, handwritten notes, and observations that could not yet be entered into any official report. From the outside, it appeared that her visit had accomplished very little. She had not interviewed every witness she hoped to meet. She had not received the original document Jason Reed quietly protected. She had not uncovered the missing digital evidence she suspected still existed. To anyone watching from inside the department, it looked as though another attorney had asked difficult questions, gathered routine paperwork, and gone home without changing anything. That was exactly what Sergeant Blake Turner believed as he watched her sedan disappear through the front gate. He leaned comfortably against his patrol vehicle and remarked to another officer that some people eventually realized they were chasing stories instead of facts. Several employees nodded politely before returning to their assignments. The day continued as though nothing important had happened. Alicia, however, understood that investigations rarely advanced because of dramatic confrontations. They advanced because small details slowly aligned until the truth could no longer be ignored. During the 40-mile drive back toward the Federal Justice Center, she replayed every conversation in her mind with remarkable precision. The hesitation in the records clerk's voice before retrieving files. Captain Laura Bennett accepting Turner's explanations without requesting supporting documentation. Jason's careful wording in the archive hallway. Turner's repeated efforts to redirect simple questions instead of answering them directly. None of those moments proved misconduct by themselves, but together they formed a pattern that deserved closer examination. As evening settled over the city, Alicia returned to her office where Special Agent Marcus Hale and Maya Collins were already reviewing incoming digital records on large computer monitors. Maya looked up first. "How did Bellwood go?" Alicia placed her notebook on the conference table before answering. "Better than it appeared." Marcus studied her expression carefully. "Something happened." Alicia nodded once. "Someone inside wants the truth to come out. They are not ready yet, but they are closer than they were yesterday." Maya opened another secure message that had just arrived from the City Technology Archive. Her eyes narrowed as she compared several file numbers. "This is interesting," she said quietly. "The surveillance request we discussed yesterday was marked unavailable by the department, but the city backup server shows the original storage log was never erased." Marcus immediately turned toward the monitor. "Can the footage still exist?" Maya continued typing for several seconds before another confirmation appeared on the screen. The original video was automatically mirrored to an off-site municipal server before anyone requested its removal from the local system. "The backup record is intact." Silence filled the conference room. Alicia slowly walked toward the monitor, reading every line twice before speaking. "Do not access it yet." Marcus looked surprised. "Why wait?" Alicia folded her arms thoughtfully. "Because if the footage is preserved exactly as it is, anyone who believes it disappeared may reveal even more by acting on that assumption." Marcus smiled slightly as he realized her reasoning. "You think someone may still try to protect a version of events that the camera already disproves?" Alicia nodded. "People reveal their intentions when they believe evidence no longer exists." Maya secured the backup log inside the protected case file without opening the recording itself. The investigation had just crossed an invisible line. Until that moment, everything depended on interviews, paperwork, and careful observation. Now there was reason to believe objective evidence had survived beyond anyone's expectations. Across town, Sergeant Blake Turner finished his shift believing another ordinary day had ended without consequence. He never imagined that while he was congratulating himself for keeping uncomfortable questions under control, a forgotten backup server had quietly preserved a record capable of changing the entire investigation. And somewhere inside the Bellwood Police Department, Officer Jason Reed was still carrying the original report that no one else believed had survived. The next morning, the underground parking garage beneath the Bellwood Police Department felt almost identical to the day before, yet everything about the moment had changed. Alicia Monroe parked in the same visitor section, carried the same leather briefcase, and walked toward the same elevator lobby with the same calm expression. She wore no badge around her neck, displayed no official credentials, and gave no indication that anything significant had happened overnight. Only she knew that the investigation had quietly reached a turning point. The municipal backup server had confirmed that critical surveillance records still existed, and every conversation from the previous day had become more valuable than anyone inside Bellwood could possibly understand. As Alicia crossed the polished concrete floor, she noticed the familiar security cameras positioned above the entrances, the reflections of patrol vehicles beneath the bright overhead lights, and the steady rhythm of employees beginning another workday. Nothing appeared unusual until Sergeant Blake Turner stepped directly into her path once again. His expression carried even greater confidence than before, as though he had convinced himself that her previous visit had accomplished nothing. "I thought I made myself clear yesterday," he said, folding his arms across his uniform. "You keep showing up where you are not needed." Alicia stopped a respectful distance away and answered with the same measured tone that had unsettled him before. "Public buildings remain open to the public." Turner smiled without warmth. "Do not play games with me. You are creating distractions for officers who have real responsibilities." Alicia remained completely composed. Requesting public information is not a distraction. It is a legal process. Turner took another slow step forward and lowered his voice. "You should start thinking about your own reputation instead of mine." Attorneys who make accusations without understanding how police work usually discover that professional doors close very quickly. Alicia looked at him steadily without interrupting. The silence encouraged Turner to continue speaking. "People in this city trust this department. They know who has spent years protecting these streets, and they know who just arrived looking for headlines." Alicia glanced briefly toward the security camera mounted above the elevator before returning her attention to Turner. "I am interested in facts, not headlines." Turner shook his head. "Then here is another fact. If you keep pushing into matters that do not concern you, do not expect anyone here to cooperate." His confidence never wavered because he believed the conversation was taking place beyond the attention of anyone with real authority. What he could not see was that municipal security systems preserved both video and audio from the garage under routine public safety policy, and because the investigation had already secured preservation requests for relevant recordings, every word spoken that morning would remain protected. Inside the building, Captain Laura Bennett reviewed her schedule, unaware that Special Agent Marcus Hale had already arrived in an unmarked vehicle parked across the street. He remained inside the vehicle with another federal investigator, quietly observing the entrance without interfering. Their role was not to create a confrontation but to document events exactly as they unfolded. Alicia never raised her voice, never challenged Turner, and never attempted to reveal who she truly was. Instead, she allowed him to speak until he believed he had fully established control over the encounter. Finally, she pressed the elevator button and waited calmly. Turner looked almost satisfied. "Take my advice while you still can," he said. "Some careers never recover from choosing the wrong fight." The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Alicia stepped inside, turned toward him, and offered one final professional response. "The truth has never been the wrong fight." The doors closed quietly between them. Turner walked away convinced he had intimidated another persistent attorney for the second time in 2 days. He never realized that every sentence he had chosen so confidently was now preserved alongside evidence he believed no longer existed, and only a few floors above the parking garage the documents carrying his future were already waiting for the people authorized to read them. The conference room on the 3rd floor had rarely felt so quiet. Morning sunlight filtered through the tall windows as Captain Laura Bennett arranged several administrative files across the polished table, expecting nothing more than another routine meeting about public records requests. Sergeant Blake Turner entered with his usual confidence, greeting colleagues with the relaxed certainty of someone who believed the previous 2 days had ended in his favor. Officer Jason Reed took a seat near the end of the table, speaking very little while keeping one sealed folder beside him. Moments later the door opened again. Alicia Monroe walked inside carrying the same leather briefcase she had carried since her first visit. Turner looked surprised to see her in a meeting that had never been described as public. "This discussion is for department personnel," he said before anyone else could speak. "I think you are in the wrong room." Alicia calmly placed her briefcase on the table but remained standing. Before she could answer, another voice interrupted from the hallway. "She is exactly where she is supposed to be." Every eye turned toward the doorway as Special Agent Marcus Hale entered beside 2 federal investigators and a representative from the City Office of Professional Accountability. Marcus carried a sealed document bearing the official authorization that had remained confidential throughout the investigation. Without raising his voice, he placed the document in front of Captain Bennett. "We are here to begin the next phase of a federally authorized administrative investigation," he said. Captain Bennett carefully opened the packet and read the first page in complete silence. Her expression changed almost immediately. She looked from the document to Alicia and then back again, as though confirming what she had just read. Turner leaned forward impatiently. "What is this supposed to be?" Marcus turned one page and gently rotated the document across the table until it faced him. "The appointment order identifying the lead attorney responsible for coordinating this investigation." Turner glanced down, expecting another unfamiliar government official. Instead, he saw the signature block near the bottom of the page. Lead Counsel Alicia Monroe. For the first time since their first encounter, his confidence disappeared completely. He looked back at Alicia, searching her expression for some sign that the situation could still be misunderstood. There was none. She spoke with the same calm professionalism she had shown from the beginning. "Sergeant Turner, every conversation we have had during the past 2 days occurred while I was conducting authorized investigative work." No one in the room interrupted her. Marcus continued, "All relevant evidence has been preserved according to federal procedure, including public records, administrative communications, and municipal security recordings requested under lawful preservation orders." Jason Reed slowly reached for the sealed folder that had remained beside him throughout the meeting. His hands were steady now. He placed the folder in front of Marcus without looking toward Turner. "This is the original report," he said quietly. "It was never destroyed." The room became completely still. Captain Bennett accepted the folder, carefully comparing it with another version already contained inside the investigative file. Several differences immediately became apparent. She closed both documents without making any public conclusions. "These materials will be reviewed through the appropriate process," she said firmly. Alicia nodded respectfully. "That is all anyone has asked for from the beginning." Turner remained silent. For the first time, he seemed to understand that authority alone could not shape the outcome of what had already been documented. Alicia had never argued with him, never attempted to embarrass him, and never revealed her position until the investigation required it. She had simply allowed every decision, every statement, and every record to speak for itself. As the meeting adjourned, the balance of power shifted without raised voices or dramatic confrontation. One signature on an official document had quietly changed the entire room, and the truth that had been underestimated from the very beginning could no longer be dismissed as the opinion of an ordinary attorney. Several weeks later, the Bellwood Police Department looked much the same from the outside. Patrol cars continued leaving the parking lot every morning. Dispatchers answered emergency calls with steady professionalism, and residents moved through the city without knowing how many quiet decisions had reshaped the department behind closed doors. The difference was not found in the building itself but in the commitment to examine every concern with greater transparency than before. The federally authorized administrative investigation continued through established legal procedures, supported by preserved records, municipal surveillance, original reports, and sworn interviews reviewed by independent officials. Sergeant Blake Turner was removed from active duty, while the process moved forward according to policy. No public accusations were rushed. No conclusions were announced before every document had been examined. Accountability did not arrive through anger or humiliation. It arrived through patience, documentation, and respect for the rule of law. Captain Laura Bennett addressed department employees during a staff meeting that emphasized cooperation instead of defensiveness. She acknowledged that public trust could only be maintained when legitimate questions received honest answers. New procedures were introduced requiring stronger documentation standards, additional supervisory review of report revisions, and expanded preservation of digital evidence. The changes were not presented as punishment but as necessary improvements that would strengthen confidence in every officer who served the community with integrity. Officer Jason Reed continued cooperating with investigators, providing factual information without exaggeration or personal attacks. His willingness to preserve the original report became one of several important pieces that allowed the complete timeline to be reconstructed accurately. He had spent months wondering whether speaking honestly would accomplish anything. Now he understood that integrity often depended upon one person choosing facts over fear. Maya Collins remained behind the scenes, carefully organizing thousands of pages of records, digital logs, preservation notices, and correspondence that transformed scattered information into a clear investigative record. Special Agent Marcus Hill quietly completed another phase of the inquiry, never seeking recognition for work that would largely remain invisible to the public. Alicia Monroe returned to her office where another stack of case files already waited on her desk. She accepted no celebration because she believed justice was never about winning personal victories. It was about ensuring that every person, regardless of background, received equal protection under the law and equal access to the truth. One afternoon, a local reporter asked why she had remained so calm even after facing repeated attempts to discourage her from continuing the investigation. Alicia paused for a moment before answering with the same quiet confidence that had defined every step of her work. "Authority can influence a conversation," she said, "but it cannot rewrite the truth. Facts remain patient. Eventually they speak for themselves." Her words spread throughout the community because they reflected something larger than a single investigation. Families who had once believed their concerns would disappear into forgotten filing cabinets began to understand that careful documentation and lawful accountability could still make a difference. Honest officers also recognized that transparency protected their profession just as much as it protected the public they served. Months earlier, Sergeant Blake Turner had believed a simple warning in a parking garage would silence an attorney asking uncomfortable questions. Instead, every decision he made after that moment became another verified piece of a much larger story he never realized was already unfolding. Alicia never defeated him through louder words, greater status, or public embarrassment. She allowed evidence, procedure, and professional integrity to accomplish what emotion never could. In the end, the most powerful authority inside that investigation was not a badge, a title, or even a courtroom. It was the simple willingness to let the truth remain unchanged until everyone was finally ready to see it. He believed power could control the story. She proved that truth never needed permission to be heard.